Starting live. All right. Cowboy Mike Hughes.
Thanks for having me. It's good.
Good.
Things are good.
Good. You're feeling good?
Pretty good for an old fellow in wrestling. Yeah, not too bad.
You said your hip popped out a while ago?
About 3 weeks ago at IHW event in Moncton. Took a power bomb from a 7-foot giant, and my hip kind of clicked out. And
oh shit!
Yeah, it's everything's getting a little harder now as I'm getting up in the years. I got to be 21 years this year in pro wrestling. 20 years, we're going on 21, and broken or dislocated or separated everything on my body. So
wow.
Every night's not a struggle, but it's a work in progress to keep everything moving properly and keep everything healthy. So
you work out every day?
I don't work out in the weights every day, but I do something every day, whether it's yoga, 2 or 3. I do 2 hours of stretching every day, an hour in the morning, an hour at night before I go to bed. I get up first thing in the morning and I get on the elliptical, or I do DDP yoga. I alternate either one. It's a yoga program that was created by Diamond Dallas Page. It was made specifically for rehabilitation of the spine and wrestlers, and now it's become a worldwide phenomena. And it's all the WWE wrestlers are using it. The NFL people are using it. It's a great rehabilitative form of yoga. But yeah, every day I'm doing something to keep my mobility and to be able to try to enhance, or not enhance, but maintain my physical abilities going into my mid-age years.
I heard with a lot of tall guys that they usually at some point in their life have back problems. Is that true for taller guys?
I think everybody has back problems in wrestling, but it's because we're always falling and hitting the mat. So, a lot of people have the misinterpretation that that's a trampoline or it's soft.
Right.
It's 2x2 steel beams on 1-inch plywood with 1 inch of foam over the top of it. So it's like putting a foam mattress on your patio. And the thing is, the human body isn't made for that kind of impact. I think that Discovery did a scientific analysis of what it's like just to take a basic fall on the mat, and it's the same as getting rear-ended by a car at 30 miles an hour. So
really?
We do that 15-20 times in the run of a 10-minute period.
Yeah. And
if anybody's ever had whiplash from one impact in a car, imagine that times 15 to sometimes 30 times in a 10-minute period. So the discs, a lot of herniated discs, a lot of fractured vertebrae, a lot of people have breaks around C6, C7 in their neck. I've had issues with mine. I've had the surgery on my neck as well. And it's a lot of back problems. It's just natural, right? And all joints are usually hurt on wrestlers if you've done it for any number of time. The schedule when you're working full-time wrestling, in the first 12 years of my career, be working anywhere from 200 to 250 matches a year. So
wow. And
when you're not in the ring wrestling, you're stiffening up doing long drives in cars, anywhere from 4 to 12 hours, maybe 20-hour drives. And when you're this tall or this big and you're either there or stuck in a plane, being immobile for long periods of time after taking that kind of abuse isn't the best thing for your body.
So you try to stretch out as soon as you get off of the mat?
I wish I should have. I do it now, but I didn't do it for the first 15 years of my career. It was one of those live and learn things, and I do it. Stretching is a very key part of my life right now.
So from the time that you first started out, those years back in, what would it be, early 90s, late 80s?
So 1998, I met Glenn Kolka and Edge and Christian here at a gym, and I got then the summer of 98 and got a phone number off of them and got introduced into pro wrestling. Just happened to stumble into them at the gym, and I seen Glenn Kolka, who was 6'3", like 330 pounds of ripped muscle, and he was at the local gym in town, and I walked in and he was with these 2 tall skinny guys with long blonde hair, and he was sitting there. He was hungover, actually. He was really hungover. He was out at Myron's the night before, and they drank pretty heavy. And he came in, and he seen me. I was a big guy, about 290 at the time. And he said, "Hey, do you want to work out?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure." I wasn't working out with anybody at the time. And I said, why? He said, well, I don't want to change weights with those two skinny guys all day. I'm tired of it. I'm hungover. The two skinny guys were Edge and Christian. So him and I just started working out. We started chatting, and he said, "Yeah, well, why don't you get into wrestling? He says, you're a big guy. You're very charismatic. You have an interaction with most of the people around here. Why don't you? You should give it a try." And I said, "Well, I've always been a big fan, but." I said, I never thought it was possible. Somebody from Prince Edward Island, like I didn't know where to go, how to go about it. And he wrote down Emile Dupre's phone number for me, the guy who owned Grand Prix Wrestling and ran Grand Prix Wrestling. And he said, here, give him a call. So that was in the summer. I waited until the fall, and I called him, and he asked me to send him a picture. So I sent him a picture of me with just in my underwear, and he said, yeah, come on over. So I went over, had a meeting with him in the fall, and then we set up to start, did one training session, then set up to start training. I believe it was late February, early March of 99.
And when you first went into the ring, what was that experience like?
Oh, just to walk into a wrestling ring when you're growing up as a child watching, I watched Grand Prix Wrestling from the time I was like 9 years old. I used to watch it with my father, and watching Leo Burke and Stephen Pettipaw and Killer Carl Krupp and the Cuban Assassin, and all these guys were these larger-than-life characters. And then to get into an actual wrestling ring, I was like a little kid all over again.
Really? You weren't intimidated at all?
Oh, I definitely was intimidated. I got in the ring, and first of all, I made the mistake that everybody does. I thought the ropes were like bungee cords or something. Right. And there's two types of ropes in pro wrestling. There's steel cables that are wrapped in a tubing, and then there's hemp ropes. So WWE uses hemp ropes, but WCW and ECW and most companies use steel cables. So I went and I hit the ropes, and it was like getting hit with like 3 broomsticks all at the same time. So that was an eye-opener. It was an eye-opener just how hard the ring was. And just the little things, like when I first started like working out on the mat, the canvas burn, all over your elbows and your knees and on your back, and just the little things. It was a whole new experience for me, and I had a total different picture in my head of, like I said, how soft things were, how hard things were, and yeah, it was overwhelming at first. Like I was kind of starstruck by the ring itself. And yeah.
Did you meet your heroes right away? Were they training at the same gym?
No, I met Hubert Gallant, who helped train me, and Emile Dupre, and I was training with Rene Dupre, who went on to wrestle in WWE, and so he was training with me. Emile was training me at first, but it wasn't going really well because Emile speaks broken English, and for a guy he's like been the godfather of Canadian wrestling, him and Stu Hart, the two of them, but his vocabulary for the wrestling business isn't that great. He would shoot me into the ropes and say, do the bloop bloop, and I didn't know what that was, and he meant like he wouldn't call it a back elbow or a body slam. He'd say do the bing bang or the boop boop, and I had no idea what he was talking about. So when you don't know anything,
right.
And that's your guide. And even if you knew everything about the wrestling business and somebody would shoot you into the ropes and say that, you'd never know what was coming. Yeah. And I definitely didn't know what was coming then.
He had his own lingo.
Yeah, and you could get, because I didn't know what was coming, I would get punched in the throat or kicked in the nuts or whatever, right? Because I just didn't know what the bing bing, the bloop bloop, and I didn't know what any of that was. So yeah, no, I know. So then they brought Hubert Gallant in to start working with me because Hubert Gallant is the most underrated pro wrestler in Canada. He was amazing. He worked all over with Leo Burke. He was Leo's tag partner for a while. He was pretty much a clone of Leo Burke. His in-ring technical ability was incredible, and he tried to do the very best with me that he could, but I just wasn't a natural when I started. My first year in wrestling, I sucked. I was terrible.
Really?
I was just a big guy with a good body that was young, and I was appealing for the female crowd at the time. I was this young, clean-cut, baby-faced kid in good shape, and that was the only thing that kept me actually working. When we started on tour in May, I started training in March, and I moved to Moncton. Actually, at first, I was sleeping in my van with my dog while I was training. And parked at the bowling alleys in Shediac, and I would sleep there for the night and with my dog and wait for training to start. And then afterwards, I got an apartment in Moncton.
So was there any pay?
Not at this time, no.
Oh, no?
No pay at all.
So how did you fund yourself?
I'd saved some money up. I'd been working. I went to university for 3 years, and I just decided it wasn't for me. I was taking psychology at UPEI, and it just wasn't what I wanted to do. I was a very good basketball player, and I was recruited to 13 different schools at a high school, and I was going to university to play basketball, and then I blew my knee out, and then there was just basketball was off the table, so university was of no interest to me. I didn't have any real set goals in life, what I wanted to do, so I just felt like I was wasting my time. So I went to work for Perfection Foods, which was a good paying job in Charlottetown at the time, and I started working there, and I saved up my money, and again, doing the monotony of warehouse work, it just wasn't for me. And I just made a decision to myself that, I'm not, and this was after I had talked to Glenn Kolka, and every day I was like, I'm just going to save my money and I'm going to go do this tryout. I have to try. I just have to know whether I could have or not. So I'd saved up some money, and then I had actually got laid off from my job at the end of it. So I had money saved, and then I got laid off, and then I went to Moncton and slept in my van with my dog while I got trained until I got my apartment in Moncton, and then went right on the road full time. And it was May 15th, I believe we started. And then I went on the road for 156 nights straight.
How does the pay work that way? It all depends on the
depends on how good you were. Yeah, I started off that night on a guarantee. I was guaranteed $500 a week to start learning. All my expenses were paid, and I was on the ring crew. I had to drive the truck. I had to set up the ring myself. As a rookie, I took a lot of the guys' bags into the arenas. I would usually work the opening match, and then I would be the guy in the tag match later that night that usually got the crap beat out of them until one of the bigger stars made the big comeback at the end of the night and was the hero, and then I'd have to tear down the ring at the end of the night and load it into the truck and then drive to the next town.
Were you going through the winter, or is this through summer?
This was summer, so this started in May 15th, I believe it was, and we went through till the end of October.
Okay. And right across Canada?
That was around the Maritime. So we did New Brunswick, Nova Scotia, PEI, and we did 7 days a week, twice on Sundays. So we did 2 shows on Sundays, and we do a matinee, and then we do an evening one, usually in Cape Breton, where we do the 2 offs. We'd usually do one in North Sydney, and then one, say, Camp or Port Hood or one of those places like that.
What was your crowds like?
Our crowds were good that year. The Beast and the Cuban Assassin had came back in Leo for a Legends final tour. And a lot of people that grew up on Grand Prix Wrestling, it had been off TV for a while, wanted to come out and see them go. And the Beast was amazing. I lived with the Cuban after we had started in a cottage on Parley Beach. So we would get back to there when we were in Moncton, we would stay there. Emile Dupre owned most of Parley Beach. When he was made his fortune in Grand Prix Wrestling in the 60s and 70s, he bought up most of Shediac. So he bought all the property down the Gould Beach Road, where all those big mansions are in Shediac now, and he bought all that land early and a whole bunch of property. I think he has like 800 apartment units in New Brunswick. And so he had a cottage there, and the Cuban and I would live there. And
wild times.
It was amazing. I remember sitting at the end of the tour, and we were sitting around having a beer together, and the Cuban had a rocking chair that he used to sit on, and I'd sit on like the floor beside him, and pull up a chair beside him on a mattress, usually stretching or whatever. And I said, I never thought in my whole life I'd be sitting here having a beer with the Cuban Assassin as a peer.
Right.
It was pretty amazing. Cuban was so good to me. Every night after my match, he would tell me what I did wrong, him and the Beast, and then they would show me how to do it right. Those guys were so good to me. It was the best learning experience that a pro wrestler could ever have.
Now, growing up, I grew up in Newfoundland, so we didn't have the Grand Prix. We didn't see that that I can remember. I remember one show coming on years ago, and I don't even know if it was a Grand Prix, but I remember a ninja.
Yeah.
Was it the Green Ninja?
I can't remember the ninja's name, but
Spitfire.
That was Muda, probably the Great
Maybe.
Muda, and but that group that worked over there, I forget the name of it, but Hartford Love, Sailor White, a lot of the guys in Newfoundland were there, and Sailor White was amazing. He was one of the Moondogs in WWE, one of the toughest men ever in wrestling. Yeah, maybe not the most technical fighter, but you couldn't knock him out with a 10-pound maul. That guy, he was tough. So there was a wrestling over there in Hartford Love, and I can't remember the other guys. They sold out a lot of arenas at the same time that Grand Prix did. And there was another guy, a Bearman Dave McKeagney, actually ran tours over there, and that's where him and Adrian Adonis died in a car accident over there in Lewisport.
Okay, yeah, I think I remember. That was a long time ago.
It was, and when I worked a lot in Newfoundland, and I was the booker for Legend City Wrestling in Newfoundland for 6 years, and I used to direct and write the TV there. I did that for 5 years. I would go over for a week, be home for 4 weeks, go back over, and I did that for 4 years. And Roddy Pipper and I, we took Pipper to the gravesite. Him and Adrian Adonis were really good friends, and he wanted to go in Lewisport to see where the accident had occurred.
Did you know Roddy?
Yeah, I did. Yeah,
really?
Yeah.
Interesting cat.
He's an amazing guy. Him and Ric Flair spent a lot of time in Dominican and Puerto Rico, and I spent 2 years in Puerto Rico in IWA. And when you're one of those guys that not only survived the island but thrived on the island, there's a special bond in generations there. And Piper and I sat down, had a few beverages one night, and sat at a restaurant. And it's funny, Piper and I just met that day, and we were walking, we were driving, and they said, well, you know, where do you want to go, Hot Rod? We'll take you. We had sponsors that were with us that would have paid for, you know, the nicest steakhouse in town, but Piper was like, nah. He goes, just take me to some little greasy spoon diner. He said, that's more my style. And the two of us went there, and we sat down, and, you know, we had a meal that night and talked about Puerto Rican wrestling. And his son Colt was with us, and yeah, it was a great couple days. One of the smartest, most humble guys.
Well, I recently found out he was kind of a conspiracy theorist guy.
Yeah,
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I was watching through some different conspiracy stuff on YouTube, and I happened to see Roddy Piper. Remember, he was in that movie They Live?
I didn't see the movie, but I know he was part of quite a few movies. And yeah, Piper was just an awesome guy. I was actually on, I think, if it wasn't the last, it was the second last Piper's Pit that he ever did.
Is that right?
Yeah, myself and Cole Cabana were on that. So
was there something that he had heart problems? Was that what?
He died in his sleep, I believe. I don't know what the actual diagnosis was, but I remember when I had messaged Colt, his son, and he had said that he had passed in his sleep.
And he wasn't that old, really, eh?
I think
he'd only be in his 60s, wouldn't he?
I would say late 60s, yeah, maybe. But he looked great when I seen him. He was in fantastic shape. I had been in a match. Piper and I were against each other. He was the commissioner, and I was the heel champion at the time. And we got to do Piper's Pit. Another thing, a small kid from PEI, grew up in the Hulkamania era, watching Piper's Pit with Jimmy Superfly Snuka and all the great Piper's Pits there was. And to be able to be a part of one of the final Piper Pits ever, it was, you know, you get that little... You do it, and then you sit back, and you're like, "That was pretty cool." You know?
So how does it work when you say you're an independent? So what does that mean in relation to somebody who works specifically for the WWE or another federation? What do they call them? Federation?
Yeah, that's a difficult one, and that's been one that's been under debate. John Oliver recently had a rant here, I think about 3 days ago, about how he felt that the statement of independent contractor that has to deal with WWE is illegal and illegitimate because they are labeled as independent contractors, but they don't have the right to go work wherever you want. or for whoever you want, and you have to do exactly what you say or you're fired. So
Right.
I can't speak to WWE's. I don't have a contract with them. I don't know the details of any new contracts. But as independent contractors, that means I can go work for whoever I want to work for, whenever I want to work for them. And I negotiate my own rate. I negotiate the details of transportation covered and hotel rooms, and if I want meals included and all that stuff. So I get to independently decide what my rate will be and what's involved in that and include it, and what I'm willing to do in the ring and not willing to do in the ring.
And you have a normal life. You're not always on the road.
I do now, yes. The first 12 years of my career, I was on the road constantly.
Okay, that was your only source of income?
What I would do is I would come home, and this was a key learning point that was one of the greatest things that the Cuban ever taught me, is he told me that don't stay on the road forever, because if you can't learn to be normal, this business, there's nothing normal about the wrestling business. Nothing.
Right. And
you become isolated, and you become, when it's just 12 guys traveling around, and you know, there's guys that become very socially inept, and there's guys that lose their manner and their couth, so to speak, if they're on the road too much. And he always told me, go back and be normal, because you might not make $1 million in this, so there might be a time when you have to go back to a normal job. Not everybody makes $1 million. So he said to me, get a normal job and go home to it 3 months a year. It'll save your family life, and it'll make going back to reality, if you need to, that much easier. So every year I would come home, and it would usually be December, January, and February. And I would come home for the winter months, backwards to everybody else on PEI, but 2 months to go away in the winter months. And I would work at the hospital, usually in the emergency room or one of the mental health facilities at the time, and as an orderly. So
when you started, what was your goal? Were you shooting for the WWF?
Absolutely. I think anybody that get into wrestling, if you're going to do anything, you want to be the very best, I think. And so my goal 100% was to be in the WWE. And then actually for a while there, I didn't care, because I had seen all these people that were making money traveling internationally and seeing all these different countries, and my goal was later, about 2 years in, was to simply make a living in pro wrestling, and to be able to do what I love to do. And your perspective changes the more, as the older you get in wrestling. The time people want they want to make the WWE, they want stardom, they want rich, and they want all the money, they want all that stuff. And then after a while, you get caught up in the lifestyle of it, and you're like, well, if I can just do this and make a living and stay busy, it's good. And then as you get a little bit older, you're like, well, maybe I should have put on more of a drive for WWE, because independently of your highs and lows, and if you get injuries, you're off for 3 or 4 months, and if you're not wrestling, you're not getting paid.
Right.
So you burn up your savings while you're recuperating from your injuries. And so to be able to make that really big money gives you a bit of a padding for life after wrestling too, as well. And it can get you through those points where you are injured. So it changed. The goals changed from time to time. At one point, I would have been quite happy to stay in Puerto Rico for the rest of my career.
Really?
The business was so hot down there. We were selling out baseball stadiums, 30,000 people every Saturday night. I remember, it's funny now, because we used to be upset if there was only 5,000 people in the arena. So our low crowds were 5,000 people. Our big ones were like 20,000 to 30,000 at Roberto Clemente Stadium.
That must be a thrill for every wrestler. Anybody in entertainment, or do you call it entertainment?
It is entertainment.
Yeah.
But every professional sport's entertainment.
Right.
If it wasn't entertainment, people wouldn't pay money to go see it.
Right.
So every professional sport is entertainment.
Right.
It's entertainment, but we're the best athletes and actors. We're the best combination of all the above.
Right, you got to have everything. Yeah.
We only get one take. We don't have stuntmen. We have to be able to work on improv. We work injured. To quote Mick Foley, if Mark McGuire gets hit in the face with a baseball and breaks his face, they call timeout, they stop the game. We break bones and nobody stops the game, guys keep going.
Yeah.
And I've never had a match stopped in my life, but I've broken or dislocated every bone in my body.
Wow. So when you go in, what's the difference from a crowd of 100 to 30,000? The cheer you must be deafened by the sound of the crowd.
It's deafening. I've worked in front of 76,000 people in India.
Wow.
And that's half the population of PEI.
Yeah, that's right.
In a cricket stadium, right?
Yeah.
And there were 76,000 inside, with I think probably another 50 to 60,000 outside.
Wow.
Waiting to get in, and so that there's an energy in that kind of that's crazy. Then Puerto Rico, though, every night down there was crazy. We had these huge crowds, but they weren't just huge; they were intense. Like they would throw rocks and spark plugs and batteries, and so if you were a bad guy down there, and especially a white guy down there, you were definitely a target, being a gringo down there. And
were you cast as the bad guy?
Oh yeah, definitely. And my boss told me, "I want you to be an asshole everywhere you go."
Really?
Yeah. So
really?
You're on the clock when you
leave.
Way. When you leave your condo, you're on the clock. So
and you're kind of known on the island here as the gentle giant.
Yeah.
You're not a bad guy by any means. So how did that go?
It was good. It got us into there was some dicey predicaments down there. There was a lot of violence in the island, and where I was living at the time, just in San Juan. There's over 1,000 murders.
Wow.
Not deaths, but murders a year. Yeah. And, there was times when I've been shot at. And
really?
Yeah. And I called my mother one night. I was at a payphone and just talked to Mom, and just kind of got in the wrong place at the wrong time. And I was.
Were they aiming for you?
No, there was a guy on the other side that was shooting back and forth. On the other side just happened to be at the payphone in the middle. So
shit.
Just kind of ducked down behind the concrete barricade that was at the bottom of the payphone. I was still on the phone talking to my mother, though. So, yeah.
she must have been worried.
She was. She was asking what that was. It's just gunfire. At the time, she didn't really realize where I was in position of that gunfire, but. Yeah, she'd spoke to me before where there was gunfire. At that time, though, like I said, she didn't know just where exactly I was positioned in that. So.
Is that the most dangerous place you've been?
Puerto Rico, I wouldn't say Puerto Rico is not dangerous. I just put myself in dangerous predicaments. I was just any place when you're aware. India was really dangerous. We had been brought in to cause chaos, and myself and Brody Steele. That's when we go to these foreign countries, they pay us to go do what nobody else wants to do. And we say the most awful, heinous things about countries and people.
No way.
And Brody Steele, at the time, my tag partner, he was on top of his game over there. And so much that we had 200 reporters riot.
Really?
While we were at a press conference. And then we had thousands burning effigies and threatening to kill us outside the hotel, to where we had to have military escort at all times. And then the coup started even worse than that, because then the military guys, they were sitting there trying to defend us from people, and we were insulting their country.
Right.
So at one point, some of the military came up and they warned Brody Steele, listen, if you guys got to go to the store, we had to have at least one machine gunner and 2 guys with pistols, because the crowds of people were just so immense, they could just flood the place out of nowhere.
Can you tell me what you said?
It was what he said. He said that India was nothing but a filthy septic tank. It smelled like one from the time we got off the plane. And he wasn't wrong. It did. And he said that he was going to, that the place was a shithole since England left occupancy.
Oh my God.
And that when he was done beating up the Great Khali, that he was going to start working on recolonizing India. So CNN was there and reported it, and all the major news stations had reported it. And so we had all these protesters outside of our hotel, and we weren't allowed to leave the hotel for a couple of days. And
so that would in the new age of we got to watch everything we say. Would that fly over here now? Could a wrestler do something like that here?
Well, our guys do. Like in Red Rock Wrestling, some of the bad guys in ours do berate PEI, right? But the thing is, people here know it's entertainment,
right?
And in some of these other countries, there hasn't been all these, exposés of the wrestling business.
Oh, so really? They don't have a history of the wrestling world?
They do, but they don't. They only, those countries, the promoters usually have big ties with government.
Okay.
And so these promoters don't allow expose documents on these TV networks. So it's been so protected that there's still passion for this. And a lot of countries still use it as propaganda. So they will bring guys in like us to berate their country, and then they'll have their national hero, and they'll beat us at the end of the tour, and everybody will be full of pride over, national pride, which is good for me, Pin me, pay me, I'm good.
Right. Yeah.
It's part of the job, right?
As long as you don't get shot.
As long as I don't get shot, yeah.
Would you go back?
Oh, I can't wait to go back.
Oh, you are going back?
Yeah. I was supposed to go on tour actually this week, but they had to cancel it. There's a lot of hostilities right now between Pakistan and India, and large gatherings are harder for the government to give arenas for large gatherings now because of the risk of bombs and stuff like that.
So who are you traveling with? What organization?
That CWE was the company that I worked for over there, and that's owned by the Great Khali, the former WWE champion, the Big Giant.
Okay.
So it's owned by him. And
what's that stand for? CWE?
Continental Wrestling Entertainment, I believe.
Okay.
Yeah. I think that's what it is. But he was there. Jinder Mahal was with us right before he went back to WWE. Yeah, we had super roster over there, all big guys that were well internationally traveled and guys that were really good in the ring. We had a hell of a roster over there, and it's one of those international tours are the best times. When you go through adversity with that and your life's on the line, you create really close bonds with the guys that you travel with.
Yeah.
Because you really have to watch each other's back, and you really have to look out for each other. And
it's like soldiers, eh? You're fighting a war together, kind of thing.
Exactly. Yeah. And there's times we've been back to back with crowds rushing us and have to fight our way out of arenas.
Really? Would you actually just push them out of the way?
No, you'd punch them in the face.
Oh, really? What?
When I was in Puerto Rico, I wrestled as Hangman Hughes.
Yeah.
And I had a big noose and inside the knot on the noose, one of the Puerto Rican guys, a friend of mine, Spectro, had got some lead wire that was really, really heavy. And he wound it into my noose. So my noose probably weighed about 12 pounds.
Right.
So with lead, and there's been a couple times myself and Bison Smith, a buddy of mine who had passed away in Puerto Rico, he had a big cowbell. So at the time I was 300 pounds and pretty, jacked up, and so wasn't Bison, 300 pounds, big blonde mohawk, and the two of us would come out of, an arena, and Puerto Rican fans would be just flooding us, and the two of us would have these ropes, cowbell, and this big lead noose. And we'd be just swatting guys, and that cowbell Bisons would split you open.
Holy shit.
Bad. Like, yeah, we'd be fighting for our lives. And I remember we were one night, it was in Louisa, Puerto Rico. We had got like gunshots came out after us at the end of it, and they had to put us in the ambulance and drive Bison and I, because they were waiting for us at our van that we came in. And they drove us to a gas station, and the two of us, great big guys, and it was 40 degrees out, and the two of us hiding in this little bathroom stall together so nobody could see us until the second van came to pick us up. And we were all cut and bleeding, and we just like fought our way out and just hiding in a thing. And the two of us just loved it.
Yeah, like, that's what I was going to ask you.
This is awesome.
This didn't turn you off.
No, we were like, we just did some great business there, because the people are gonna want to kill us even more next week, and they're gonna tell their friends, and we're gonna sell more tickets, and we're gonna have a bigger crowd and a more hostile crowd. And yeah, we loved it. Yeah. I still love it.
Yeah. there's no such thing as bad promotion.
No, and there's a lot, it's all about putting asses in the seats, and if that's what does it. And in some of these countries where they want people to do the extreme, a lot of people don't want to do that.
Right.
And there's very few of us guys that are willing to do that. And, there's some of us that are just adrenaline junkies. We like that fight or flight high, right? That's better than any drug in the world is that feeling, that rush when your life's on the line. And it's not smart, obviously, I've been told, but there's some of us, myself and Brody Steele and guys like Crimson and we live for that.
Is that right?
Yeah.
I saw an interview with Jake the Snake on Rogan, and he was talking about the worst thing he ever did was take that snake with him. And then he was devoted to have to travel with the snake everywhere he went. And he said that was the hardest thing, trying to ship this thing through the airports and all that. And he had to show people that he had this snake, and he had to put it in his wherever hotel he was in a tub.
Yeah,
yeah. And he was talking too about all the hits and smacks and how his body
being stabbed and stuff. Jake's a great guy, and not only that, he's a great storyteller. Jake and I.
He didn't stop on that podcast. He was just boom, 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 boom for I think 3 hours straight.
Yeah, and he's an amazing storyteller. Jake and I had done a tour. So Jake and I had first met in England in 2003. And I met Jake at his lowest point in his career.
He talked about his depression and drug use.
He was his drug use was so bad. He didn't even, so Jake was one of my favorites of all time. And I'd met him in Plymouth, England at a big hall over there, and it was a big show. And Jake was coming in the first time, and as he walked in the door, he was drinking a pint of whiskey, was smoking crack out of a pipe at the same time, and he was yelling, "Where's the Canadian? Where's the Canadian?" Because him and Leo Burke had been good friends.
Okay.
And he knew that I had worked with Leo when I was from the Maritimes, and I came over and he just instantly started telling me stories. And I didn't know whether to be impressed or disgusted that a man could smoke crack and drink and talk at the same time. And so anyway, later on, Jake passed out in the ring that night. Didn't even finish his match. Because the guy, to his credit, Sin Kazarni, kind of let him get pinned by Jake as he passed out.
Okay.
And so anyway, years later, fast forward to a month after Jake's recovery, right after they filmed The Resurrection of Jake Roberts, Jake had just started going out on tours again, but he needed a sponsor, I guess you'd say, somebody that would give him his Antabuse in the morning. And so him and Kazarni were good friends, the original Sin, and Nick was only Nick's his real name, was only allowing him to go with people that he trusted. So I was booking, like I said, in Newfoundland, and we wanted to bring him out for a tour out in Newfoundland. And so Nick had entrusted, because I was there, because we were friends, to look after Jake. So Jake came out for 2 weeks, and he was amazing. He was so generous and nice, and we traveled together for the 2 weeks. And at the last night I was there, I said to Jake, "Jake, do you remember the first time we met?" And he said, "Yeah, at the airport here 2 weeks ago." I said, "No, Jake, we were actually on tour together in England in 2003.
Right.
And he goes, "Yeah, and what did you think?" I said, "Well, do you want me to be honest with you?" He said, "Yeah." I said, "You were the biggest disappointment of any wrestler I'd ever seen." I said, "You were my hero when I was a kid. And to see you like that," I said, "I was disgusted."
Really?
And he cried. Yeah, and I felt so bad, but he told me to be honest with him.
Well, there you go.
I'm terrible for being brutally honest. I'm not much for sugarcoat and stuff.
Well, it probably helped in his recovery too, is to see the truth of how his actions affected others around him too.
And it did, and that was not my intent. He had suffered enough, but sometimes I'm just stupid when somebody says tell the truth. I'm not much for sugarcoating things, and but he thanked me. He thanked me for it, and Jake's a really cool guy. There's nobody smarter in the business than he is as far as wrestling and ring psychology. He's a genius. Right?
When I heard him on Rogan, I was really impressed. I don't think I had seen any other of his guests who could hold the conversation for so long. I don't think Rogan had a chance to even interject. He was just boom, boom, boom. Like I said, I think it was a 3-hour podcast.
And not only can Jake just talk, but he can carry a story. He's a good storyteller.
Yeah, he was telling some. Yeah, it was really.
His timing, his tone. He knows when to elevate his voice. He's one of the greatest promo guys in the wrestling business, and one of the great storytellers of all time. Jake and I that week, actually, we had when we first met, he bag tagged me as soon as we first met, and he dropped me.
Right.
So for the rest of the week, that was the ongoing thing. So Jake and I had done a tag match in, I believe it was Grand Falls, and we won at the end of it, him and I. And the referee raised our hands, and when we raised our hands, I went over and I bag tagged him right at the end. It was the last night of the tour and dropped him. So, no, Jake's a great guy. He was, he was the devil himself, I guess, for most of his career, and he'd be the first to tell you that. But he's really made a recovery, and it's great to see. He's very inspiring. Anybody who's had issues with addictions or loss of connection with family and stuff like that, watch the resurrection of Jake Roberts. It's very inspiring, and not only does it show the recovery of him, but the quality of the character of a guy like Diamond Dallas Page is. So.
Yeah, I don't know him, but he talked a lot about Diamond Dallas, and how Diamond helped him recover. I guess he lived with him for a while.
He lived with him. He took him in, and he helped him with his recovery and his Diamond Dallas Page yoga.
Oh, right. That's where I heard it before.
Yeah.
Okay, so okay. I haven't looked into him, but I will.
And Dallas is a great guy too. I toured with Dallas when he was starting his DDPY yoga, and he gave me the program, and he gave me all the DVDs, and just stay in touch. And he's the most motivating person ever.
And before I forget to mention, you have worked for the WWE.
I worked in WWE. I worked on Monday Night Raw and on SmackDown in 2003.
So you did make it. That was your goal, you say. So you did make it to the WWE.
Yeah. So I worked both on Monday Night Raw and on SmackDown, and then later on in 2007. I got called to go to their development camp in Ohio Valley, which would be the equivalent of what NXT is now. So I got flown down to Kentucky. I was there for 13 days and did an evaluation camp. And at the end of it, Johnny Ace's words were, at the time I was much bigger. I had long hair. I was almost 300 pounds. And Johnny Ace, his words were... right now we're going with a more cosmetically appealing look. They wanted guys like Randy Orton and John Morrison and to really appeal to their female crowd. And so we had a little discussion, and we agreed that we disagreed on. We thought all the bad guys should be like nasty looking guys, and then we stopped, and they sent me home, and I just never contacted them much after that. And it wasn't until I got home I was like, I think he just called me ugly.
So do you approach them, or they approach you? Do you need an agent in this?
It helps, definitely. Now you do, but you mostly have to do you have to contact them. There's no scouts. There's no recruits with stuff like that. They have them for college wrestlers, like Brock Lesnar was recruited, Shelton Benjamin, guys like that are recruited. Gerald Briscoe, I think, used to do the recruiting for that, but no, it's about sending in tapes and maintaining contact and constantly pestering them, actually. So, and I was so busy at the time trying to make money that I wasn't interested. Well, not that I wasn't interested. It was a second thing in my priority list. Making money was my first priority by wrestling, instead of getting in touch with them for tryouts.
Well, it's a whole other job, isn't it?
It is, yeah. And I'm not a technical savvy person. Like emails and attaching videos and editing videos to send them, and back then it was all done on VHS tapes, which was even harder.
Yeah.
So I didn't know how to do any of that. And so it was in hindsight, I probably should have figured it out and learned. But yeah, no, it was a great experience. But
so those guys, they would be making the top dollars. Those guys in the WWE, is that right?
Back then, in the 90s, it was. The 90s is when there was a wrestling boom. For the last few years, only like probably the top 25% of the roster would be. A lot of the guys were like on minimums of $200,000 a year, and that sounds great, but when those guys have to pay for their own hotels, they have to pay for their own trans, they have to buy a gym pass every day in a different town, they have to eat on the road. So, your $200,000 guarantee turns into like $60,000 at the end of it, right? Yeah. So, I'm not sure there's tax stuff and all that, but you have to file your taxes in every state that you work in, and so it sounds good on paper, $200,000, but it gets back to about $60,000, and then you're crippling your body at the end of it.
Right.
You're away from your family. So those guys that are on the top, it's worth it. It's all worth it, I guess. I shouldn't say it's not worth it, but you have
to get the bigger payout at the end. They can retire and
be done at the end. Where not everybody gets that option on the WWE roster. John Cena, absolutely, that guy's making and the other spin-offs, like guys like The Rock,
wow,
he's making more money than everybody.
Yeah, every movie he makes, boom, it's a blockbuster.
Yeah, I think he's making like $90 million a year now or something.
Have you ever met him?
Yes, yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Everybody says that he is exactly how he seems on camera.
I only met him for a brief second. There was a backstage thing at the show, and he was there, and it was, "Hi, I'm Dwayne. Hi, I'm Mike," and
that was it.
That was it, kind of deal. Yeah.
Did you have to look up to him?
No, I'm taller than he is.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. You're 6'6"?
Yeah.
He's what?
6'4".
Oh, is that right? Yeah. Okay. I thought he was around 6'6" too, but he's a big lad.
He is a big lad.
Yeah. So, where did you come up with Cowboy?
Well, I didn't come up with Cowboy. So, before Grand Prix Wrestling, there was Wrestling in the Maritimes, and it was run by a guy named Cowboy Hughes.
Oh.
And Cowboy Hughes was Emile Dupre's partner. And so later on, Emile had taken it over from Cowboy Hughes. So when I had started, Emile was infamous for being uncreative with new wrestlers' names that he was creating. So he just said, you know something? We had the Cowboy Hughes. We will say that he was your grandfather, and you will be Cowboy Mike Hughes. And I was like, I was just happy to be in the wrestling business. And then, so I wrestled as Cowboy, and I used to have like the blue jeans and the cowboy hat.
Okay, you did.
And the vest.
Okay.
And I was lucky. So when Randy Savage had left WWF and had went to WCW, him and Emile Dupre were good friends. And Emile, I think, was the best man at somebody's wedding, Lanny's, or Lanny was at his. The Poffo family was really close with Emile. So he was down there and he worked out a bit. So he had a pair of purple boots with black stars on them that he had left there. And my first pair of wrestling boots were Randy Savage's.
Oh, really?
But they got stolen. But I used to wear those with the cowboy boots and everything. And then I had a falling out with Emile a year later, and he said that I couldn't use the name Cowboy Mike Hughes. So he said that he had entitled to it or whatever. So that's why I switched it to a K for copyright purposes.
That's what I was going to ask you the next question. Why the K?
Yeah, so I was originally with a C, and then because of that I had to change it to a K. And I had tried to just drop it. I went with Iron Mike Hughes, and I actually, funny enough, there's a couple posters. They had me down as Sheamus. They wanted me to do an Irish gimmick. Okay. And like the one today, obviously, that's in WWE. But I showed up at the arenas, and I was to Sheamus, and the fans chanted Cowboy anyway.
Yeah.
So the fans had already decided, so I just decided I'll switch it to a K, and Cowboy it is.
Sounds
Get
good.
rid of the cowboy hat, though.
Yeah. Well, that's because when I came to the island and saw posters of you, when I heard your name first, and then when I saw the poster, it wasn't what I had envisioned. I was thinking of a guy in chaps, like I said, with in a cowboy hat. And
it ended up being more of like a biker gimmick than it did anything. Long hair and the tattoos, and I was wearing like a leather pants at the time, I think, and it's kind of stayed more that route than anything. And I like motorcycles, and I have motorcycles, so drove a motorcycle to the ring, so just kind of switched it up that way a bit.
And in your new endeavor, Red Rock, how long has that been going now?
Red Rock Wrestling started in 2009. I had worked with other promoters in the area, working for them, kind of running the day-to-day operations of different promotions. But they didn't... What I wanted to do when I started Red Rock Wrestling is... The wrestling business is very carny-like. They kind of lie, cheat, and steal, a lot of them, and it was something that I wanted to change about the wrestling business. So when I started Red Rock Wrestling, I wanted to do things my way, where I could focus on a wrestling company that would give back to the community. And other wrestling promoters didn't want that. They didn't want any process. So that was something that I'd want to start, and I wanted to be able to give back to the different charities and organizations in the community. So that was, we started in 2009, and PEI has been so supportive. They've really supported us, and got behind us in all our fundraising endeavors that we've done. And we work with Children's Wish, we worked with the MS Society, with the Canadian Cancer Society, Island Hospice. I can't even remember all the different charities we've raised money for.
And are all these local guys, or?
No. I'm the only local wrestler from Prince Edward Island. I had trained Chris Cook, and he was from Truro, and he moved to Prince Edward Island now. Zach Doyle, who I had trained his father actually 18 years ago at Trash Canyon. When Zach decided to get into the wrestling business, his father sent him over to me to learn, and now Zach has stayed here, and he wrestles for me now too. So there's 3 of us living on the island, but I'm the only Islander.
Okay. And how often do you have these matches?
We do. So right now, my tag team partner Brody Steele owns a company in IHW. There's another fellow, Andre the Answer, who has one in in Truro, and there is another promoter that works in Cape Breton. So I run probably 10 to 12 matches a year, around 6 on Prince Edward Island and 6 off island. And so these other promoters promote on the other days. So if I run on a Friday, one of the other guys will work on a Saturday, the other guy will promote a show on a Saturday or Sunday. So we'll do like weekend loops right now. Yeah. So.
And with all do you own all the gear,
I own the ring, McDougal Steel built the ring for us, and they built all our guardrails, and I own everything, the video screen, all that kind of stuff. We just gradually picked away with it as the budget provided. We're not getting rich by running Red Rock Wrestling, but any money that we made, we'd put back into the promotion for better production, and then of course the fundraising. So Children's Wish has been our charity of choice for the last few years, and being able to grant wishes for the last probably 5 or 6 years has been super rewarding. So we just kept putting money back into it, and now we have a TV show on Eastlink Television. It's on every Tuesday night at 9 o'clock.
How'd that happen?
We'd wanted on TV for years, and we had signed a TV deal with Bell. We were on Bell for a couple of years, and the show, anybody who's seen it thought it was great. Problem is with Bell, it was so hard to find. You had to click on sports and then click down 2 drop boxes to wrestling, and then down through. And so it just, people weren't able to see the show. So we had gotten such good response, and then Matt Beersley and Bruce McLean from Eastlink had seen our actual show and our product, and they want to help us to be able to get our product to a wider variety of islanders, so more people would know what they're doing, maybe get out and support the shows where there'd be more money raised for the charities. So it was really good that Eastlink stepped up and wanted to help us expose our product to a greater number of people for greater good of the charities that we were working for. So
is that seen across the Maritimes?
It's seen across Canada right now.
Oh, really?
So it started off on PEI for the first year. We were just PEI, and then they opened it up because apparently the ratings were so good that they opened it up to Nova Scotia. And then that went so well that they opened it up, and it's available nationwide right now.
Oh, cool.
Everywhere's but Newfoundland and I think New Brunswick.
Oh, they're doing their own thing.
New Brunswick has like Rogers and NTV in Newfoundland, so there's not any providers, Eastlink providers.
Oh, okay, yeah. And what's the show you're talking about? You're going to train for this week, or the upcoming gig you have going?
So Stratford Town Hall,
yeah.
April 12th. We're having another big show there. We have 2 shows every spring. They're TV tapings for Eastlink. So this will be the first one of the season for us. We don't run in winter, obviously, because it's too hard getting guys in here.
Yeah.
You know, the bridge shuts down, flights are canceled or delayed. It's hard to promote. We do a lot of grassroots promoting with posters and stuff. So it's just hard to do things that way.
I went last year. I took my kids.
Oh,
to the Stratford one. Yeah, it's a good show.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So this will be our first one in the spring. We kind of wait until we hopefully get through all the snowstorms. Well, apparently Monday we're getting one.
Oh, really? I haven't heard that.
And we're gonna have those shows. There'll be recordings. We'll have 2 more in the fall, and we're currently working on a big show for Up West in the middle of July in the western end of the island too, as well. And we always run one in Montague as well.
I do. Do you have a venue picked yet, or for Up West?
Up West, we don't. We are working with the Boys and Girls Club. So Adam Binkley is working on finding the venue that he feels is the best appropriate. We can do the best crowd and make the most money for the Boys and Girls Club.
And besides ticket sales, I guess your merch is the only thing you can really make money on?
It is, but all of merchandise goes directly to the Children's Wish Foundation.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, that's something that I've done since day one. So.
And your mother is involved?
Mother's always involved.
She's there.
Yeah, she's there. I
saw her there last
year.
year.
In the canteen or selling merchandise, and she helps set up chairs. It's a family affair. You know, everybody. My wife sells tickets at the door. She runs the canteen. Mom helps her out. My sister's there helping out. She's either taping up. She's an occupational therapist, so she's stretching or taping people in the back. You know, my brother's helped me lug the ring. Thank God. You know, the setup. My family helps me so much. My close friends, Jason Mosier and John Haywood, all these guys that come out, volunteers, Tyler Hayes, everybody comes out and just helps because, like I said, all the money, it's either going back into the company or it's going to charity. So,
and you got to pay the wrestlers that come.
I have to pay the wrestlers, the transportation here, the hotel rooms, everything like that. So every bit that we can help with volunteers is a big help to us and what we can donate.
Are you looking for volunteers?
Always looking for volunteers. Yeah, get a hold of us on the Red Rock Facebook page or kmhpromotions@gmail.com. Anybody wants to volunteer, give us a shout. We are more than in need for sure.
Is there the younger crowd, or do you see anybody wanting to become wrestlers now? Who you said you've trained a few guys, but is it sort of dying away, or is it coming back up? Or
everybody wants to be a wrestler. Nobody wants to do the work that it takes to become a wrestler.
Right.
And a lot of people become disillusioned with the thought that it's a trampoline. I've had every year that I would try to run a wrestling school, everybody came out, telling me how they were going to be the next Rock, and then they took one fall in the ring and they were like, this is for me. Or they would run the ropes and they'd hit that, and that second rope comes up and hits you in the kidneys. It's like getting hit with a bat in the kidneys, and people think, like I said earlier, that it's like a bungee cord, but there's a big difference in what you would like and what you're going to get in wrestling. So
you've got to be a gymnast, to fly off those top ropes.
Well, you have to be a little bit of everything. A gymnast, a bruiser, a tough guy. You need to be an actor. You need to be a little bit of everything. Like I said, it's the most well-rounded form of entertainment there is. You're a stuntman. You're a actor. You're an improvist. You're everything all in one.
Do you still get the same rush now after doing a show that you got when you first started?
I have a rush. It's not the same rush. In the first few years, it was nervous about everything, about the crowd, about the match. I get a rush now because I find it so comfortable for me. I love being in front of an audience. I love the energy from the crowd in the ring. My nervousness and rush is I want to have the absolute best match. And for me now at my age, I want to prove the young guys that I can still go better than all of them. And at the end, I want to have the best match of the night, and I want everybody, whether it's the guys in the back or the guys and the girls in the front that are watching, to say that Mike Hughes had the best match on the card. I don't want them to say, not bad for an old guy. I want them to say that's the best match on the card, hands down.
I was watching the Red Rock Wrestling there last Tuesday night, and I started to think about it because I knew you were going to come on here and talk, and I started really thinking about what would it take to do what those guys are doing. And I was watching, there was a guy, he had the white and black separated pants on, dreadlocks.
Titus. Yeah.
Anyway, well, and he was with another bigger guy, and anyhow, I was watching the two of them go back and forth across the ring, and I just thought, that must take a lot of energy.
It does.
Yeah, it has to.
And so Brody Steele, the guy that he was wrestling, is 6'8", 320 pounds of solid muscle.
Yeah.
And I've had people say to me, that Titus isn't that big. But Titus is 6'4" and he's 240 pounds.
Yeah.
He's just standing beside Brody Steele. He didn't look that big. So
yeah. But I mean, when you're done the match, you must be just huffing and puffing and sweating.
Yeah. But these guys, the guys that take it serious, and the guys that want to do it as a living, like I said, we train every day. I'm either in the gym or doing rehabilitation 2 hours a day, every day. And so there's a lot of effort that needs to be put in. That's one thing about Red Rock Wrestling. We have the highest caliber of talent in Canada. And I would say I would put our roster against pretty near any company in the world right now. In England, Germany, all these. I've wrestled in all these different places. And the caliber that's in Atlantic Canada, and specifically in Red Rock Wrestling, is off the charts right now.
Really?
Yeah. Our size of our competitors is way bigger than everywhere else.
Yeah, there's some big dudes there.
We have guys like Riddick Stone, that's 6'3", like 300 pounds, solid muscle. Brody Steele, myself, Chris Cook is 6'5", close to 280 to 300 pounds.
And that's what people want to see, the big guys.
Yeah, they want to see guys
boxing.
that are larger than life. Heavyweights has always been the biggest draw.
Yeah.
You have two flyweights in boxing, and it's not going to sell the place out. Right. But you have Mike Tyson and Evander Holyfield. It's a sellout, and that's not taking away from the caliber about it. But wrestling is shock and awe, and it's not just that these guys are big; it's that these guys are big and move that well. That can do all these athletic things.
Yeah,
there's a lot of 5'7", 160 pound gymnasts, and although that is impressive, it's even more impressive when you have a guy 6'5", 280 pounds doing the same thing.
Yeah.
And to be able to physically take that abuse and get back up.
Right. Yeah.
When you see a guy get dumped over the top rope and falls on the concrete floor, that hurts. And the old cop out by people that didn't believe just how tough we were was, they know how to fall.
Right.
Well, the difference about knowing how to fall is when we know how to fall, you just get hurt. When you don't know how to fall, you get injured. And hurt means that you're sore and you get up and do it again immediately.
Yeah.
Injured means that you won't be able to do it for a while until something.
Have you done those matches where somebody grabs a chair and smacks over your back and those?
I was a hardcore champion in Puerto Rico, and Puerto Rico is known for the most violent and bloodiest wrestling in the world.
Wow.
So I was the king of blood and guts for about 6 months down there.
Do you actually get cut up?
Yeah.
Really?
I've been cut up. My head's not too bad now. It's healed pretty well, but you can see some of the lines here and scars over it. And I've had the corner of the folding chairs. One time it had flipped out sideways, and the chair had actually punctured my skull and stuck right into my head. So,
God.
Yeah, I've had 17 concussions in 20 years.
Really?
And my doctor has no idea how I'm not in a wheelchair and not drooling and everything. But I have post-concussion syndrome, so it has its challenges and days. But when you weigh the good that we're doing in the community and the money we're able to raise for charities, and like headaches and stuff are worth it to me.
How long do you think you can keep doing this?
You had asked me 10 years ago, I would have said forever. Asked me this morning when I was trying to get out of bed, I'd say hopefully just to the end of the week. But I don't know. I think I got a few more years left in me. I'm lucky. I have a good team around me that keeps me treated and well. I do a lot of fascia stretch therapy.
Right. Yeah. What is that?
So I'm a fascial stretch therapist myself, and my best friend Jason Mosier at Naturally Fit, we both went and we took the course last summer. And what it is your fascia is a connective tissue that surrounds all your muscles and your nerves in your body. And when they become twisted from different movements or dehydration and that, the fascia twists. So the best way that I can explain it is like a sausage. The meat in the middle is like your muscle, and the sheath around the outside of it, if you were to twist that, it would restrict the flow of fluids and blood from one end of that sausage to the other. Right. And when that happens, the tissue dries out because there's no elasticity in it. When that happens, it can pull bones, vertebrae, and ribs and everything out of place, and that's where soreness, and a lot of people have it in their neck now because of using phones all the time. And sitting at desks all the time, and their hips and lower back get sore from it. So we do a form of stretching that's combined with PNF, and that releases the tissue and allows the blood flow and that get back. And I believe it's the most effective way of treating sports injuries and just injuries from people sitting at desks and using phones and everything all day. My sister had started doing myofascial related to it, which is a little bit different, but almost the same. And she took it about 15 years ago. And I would see her on the road. She used to live in Dalhousie, or live in New Brunswick, and she also lived in Halifax. So during my travels around the Maritimes, if I got the opportunity to stop and get a treatment, she would treat me, and the results from it were phenomenal. And since I started treating people here, I've been having phenomenal results as well. So Jason Mosier treats me. I obviously can't treat myself. So he does treatments on me, which he put my hip back into place for me here about a week ago.
So it's all over the body?
It's all over the body. From the fascia runs from the top of your head to your toes. And when one part winds up, it just restricts everywhere else. And it'd be like if you had a balloon and you twisted it, the tension's going to be felt at the top and the bottom of the balloon, even though it's being twisted.
So is a hands-on massage?
It's hands-on, and it's more of a manipulating the different appendages, like your arms and legs and neck, to be able to feel the tissue and to allow the tissue to release. Okay.
And where do you do that out of?
I do that out of my house. The bottom part of my house I've turned into a treatment center. Okay. So, yeah, I have people come over and I treat them there.
Can they be covered on insurance?
No, it's not covered on insurance. There's no governing body, so it's not... everything now needs a governing body. And, so it's just... if people need treatment, they just get a hold of me, and if I can help them, I can help them. And, they usually... it's been very effective for me, for people that have gone to physiotherapy for 2 years with no results, for people that have gone to a chiropractor and haven't quite gotten the results that they wanted. So it's a different... I'm not saying it's better, or it's just if you've tried everything else and it hasn't worked, then maybe try fascial stretch therapy.
And coupled with your yoga and your stretching, I guess that all helps.
Everything with me over the years, I've found my body has changed over the years. I went from lifting heavy weights all the time and doing high endurance. I've learned a lot over the years of my travel. I was fortunate enough I got to live and train in the New Japan Dojo and both the Inoki Dojo in LA. Really? So I've got to experience a lot of different training techniques over the years and different methods of healing and stretching. And
so, you were training for this in those dojos?
Well, I would learn different stretching techniques and different joint manipulation techniques and that. So that it wasn't fascia stretch, but I combine a lot of what I've learned over the years to help people with whatever's ailing them at the time, just from experience.
You try to stay away from the pain medications?
Yes, yeah. I had some issues with pain medications in Puerto Rico, just from dislocated shoulders, herniated discs, and neck issues, and it didn't go well. So after detoxing from that when I got home, I made it a conscious effort to refrain.
Well, it seems to be the way things are going. People are trying to use, they call them alternative techniques or massage, and to stay away from anything that's that they would have to rely on chronically, pretty much. I mean, and once you start on a regime of drugs, it seems like you have to keep taking them. I mean, it's not a cure.
Pain medication only cures symptoms. It doesn't cure the problem. So in order to cure the problem, pills aren't going to do it. So you have to be able to find what the root of the problem is and treat the root of the problem. And there's no treatment for pain at the root of the problem. That is medication. Medication is just a symptom of what is actually causing that pain.
All right. It's just to dull the pain, to block the root of
if you have a subluxated vertebrae in your neck, taking pain medication for the rest of your life isn't going to put the vertebrae back into place. Yeah. So you can take pain medication all the time, but it's always going to be sore the second you don't take medication. And I think that society has always become a quick fix answer. No, it's less and less people want to put in the time and the work. Everybody says they don't have time and they don't want to put in the effort. So the path of least resistance is a human character and characteristic. And unfortunately, I think we've seen the results of that with the amount of pain killer addictions and stuff. Someone who's worked in the addiction field while I've been home and in mental health, I've seen firsthand the results of all that. And our healthcare system is quick to go with what seems to be the simplest or easiest, and patients are usually want to take what's quickest and easiest, but it might not be the best.
Yeah.
And so
so elaborate on that. That's what you're telling me. This is something you do now. You're involved with mental health.
I work for the Canadian Mental Health Association right now. I'm working as a peer, they call it specialist counselor, whatever you want to call it. So we people that have had similar issues, try to mentor people that are going through the same troubles. And I've been fortunate. Wrestling has either put me in a position to experience all these different things, like I said, with painkillers, and we have the highest rate of suicide of any profession in the world.
Really?
Wrestlers die at 7 times the rate of the next highest profession. And so, I deal a lot with people that have suicide, depression, anxiety, and addictions is what I usually work with quite a bit.
Why do you think that is, that they have a higher percentage?
We're on the road all the time. We're in constant pain. We're away from our families. There's a lot of depression that comes with concussions that maybe are undiagnosed. Like the great advice I'd mentioned earlier of the Cuban of telling me to go back to a normal world. A lot of people have a hard time when they're done, when wrestling's done with them. I don't want to say when they're done with wrestling, because nobody's ever done with wrestling. Wrestling's usually done with them. And when they can't go back to a normal world. I remember talking to a friend of mine that had committed suicide later on, and he said that nobody cheers for me. He had to go back to work in maintenance. He said, nobody cheers for me when I take out the garbage.
Yeah. Kind of like the movie The Wrestler, eh?
The movie The Wrestler was a very good depiction of what can happen in wrestling. And that's why I've always been fortunate for the Cuban Assassin for giving me that piece of advice to get used to working a normal job and going back and having a normal routine so that the day ever happens that you have to go back, and that's probably something that might have saved my life, right? That's that good piece of advice, and I love what I do now. I love that I get to wrestle. I love that I get to raise money and be effective in my community and give back to the island. And I not only financially, but with my new job now with Canadian Mental Health Association, I get to actually help people develop a plan to increase the quality of their life while they're dealing with their struggles. So,
is there a certain age group that you see more of than others?
I've noticed now 18 to 25 is a big issue. I think a lot of that has to do with social media and video games, isolation. I think a lot of people isolate so much and don't do enough interaction with people that when they do, they don't have the ability for social cueing. They don't have the ability to pick up on body language until it's too late. And then when things become either verbally or physically hostile, they relate that to something that they don't want to be around. So then they isolate even further. And then everything becomes anxious for them. Any social setting, whether it's school, playing sports, or anything, anywhere where there's more than one or two people, becomes socially difficult for them. Wow. And I think too that as parents, everybody wants to not put their child through anything. That's,
I was going to say that we're helicopter parents.
Yeah,
me and my wife do it too, and we don't even realize, I said to her the other day, we were looking for our 10-year-old was out riding his bike last night, and it was starting to get to dark, and my wife says, should we go check on JD? And I said, maybe we shouldn't.
Yeah.
Maybe we shouldn't, because I said, our parents didn't come looking for us when we were kids.
Yeah.
It was dark out when we came home. Everything was fine.
Yeah.
We're in a safe neighborhood. Everybody knows everybody. Why? But there's this thing in our heads that we've been drilled into us. I don't know where it came from exactly. Maybe it's the media. Yeah. There's a pervert around every corner. You're afraid to let your kids out of your sight.
And I don't know if it's any worse than it was before. I think that we're probably more aware of the incidents that do happen because they're put out in social media more. But the biggest problem I find is as kids in my generation, well, we're the same age, is that we were left to deal with things and we grew through difficulties as individuals. So any bit of friction, you grew from friction. And exactly. I try to relate this to people that if I'm dealing with them, that when if they work out, in order to make a muscle to grow, you have to tear it.
That's right. Yeah. And
then you fill it in with nutrition, and that fills the muscle and fills in the area, and that's where the growth occurs. And it's the same thing, I think, with the children, that if they go through some friction in their life, whether it's socially or whatever, then you allow them to build the tools to fill in and create, and that makes them grow socially and mentally as well. And because we don't allow that to happen, we jump in and try to. Then when they get out on their own after university and after schooling, where they have all these things in place to protect them, that when they get to the real world and they get to their job and their boss says, you're not doing a good job, you're not getting a ribbon just for showing up. There's no participation medals in the real world. I don't care what your mother told you, you're not the greatest. And that becomes really hard for people to deal with. And then a lot of anxiety comes with that, and then they isolate, and then things go downhill from there. But
so they start taking medications to cover their anxiety?
To cover their anxiety and to forget. The other biggest issue that we have here, and Islanders specifically don't want to talk about it, is we have so much trauma. Our rate of sexual abuse that when I worked in addictions was 70% of our clientele had admitted to sexual abuse.
Really?
Let's admit it. So I'm guessing the ones that didn't admit, you're probably closer to the 85 mark.
Both sexes? Both genders?
Sexes, yeah.
Really?
And so people take drugs to forget. And that's a big issue that I have with our addictions program. Our addictions programs, we're treating them for drug and alcohol use. But the real problem is the trauma they've experienced, whether it was sexually, whether it was physically being abused, or whether it was verbally being abused as children and older adults. And you can detoxify somebody from drug programs, and you can detoxify somebody from alcohol, but as soon as they stop, the issues that they're having a hard time dealing with. And I believe we don't have enough psychologists, we don't have enough counselors, we don't have enough people that can help these people deal with the issues of why they're using drugs and alcohol. If you go in for hip surgery, you or I, and my father, they say it's genetic, and a lot of our system now believes that, oh, it's genetic, or it's this, and this will be very controversial what I say, but I don't believe it's an illness. It's been deemed that, and this is just my opinion. And I come from a family of alcoholics. I've had my issues with painkillers myself, and I was able to stop whenever mine was not only pain, but the tolls of being on the road and being away from my family and everything. So once you fixed what you're dealing with, you don't need to mask or forget the substance. All we do is treat, and the easiest way now I find that we treat people that have drug addictions is we give them another drug. Methadone use it's the easy way, right?
Right, yeah.
And I just heard research the other day that the only drug that you can die from withdrawal of not having it is alcohol.
You're right, yeah.
So, but the amount of methadone that we put into these kids, and we shackle them because they can't go without it, and we've trained them to believe that they can't go without it.
And it was supposed to just, when they first introduced methadone, what I understand is it was supposed to be a withdrawal process
of 6 months.
6 months tops, right?
But we have people that are on it for 16 years.
Wow, yeah. And the government is paying for that.
And they're paying for it, but people are getting rich off it.
Right, yeah.
So there's a lot of hands that are getting greased by having people on methadone. So I don't agree with it. You'll hear, to each their own on that opinion, but
right.
I don't think you fix a drug problem with other drugs.
Right. Have you heard any of some people talk about psilocybin?
I have.
And how it's fixed deep issues?
I haven't, and I actually know somebody whose daughter was in mental health for years, and it cured her depression with it. And I've listened to a lot of different research with modern medicine and stuff like DMT. Psilocybin, all these different things. And
have you ever tried it?
No, I want to.
I do too.
I'm kind of scared.
Yeah, me too.
I know I know all the stuff I'm scared of that's in my head. I don't really want to know about the stuff that's in there that I don't know about that could be scarier.
I want to see the elves.
Yeah, I don't know what's in there. And now there's a lot of damage in there, so it could be really scary in there now. But I think when you've tried everything and it hasn't worked, try anything.
Well, this is it, right? Yeah. I noticed some really good research that they've been doing. Apparently, they were doing the research back in the 40s on LSD and psilocybin. They were
ayahuasca?
Not ayahuasca at that point. Yeah. That came later. But they were doing actual clinical research back in the 40s. And they had great success. It was like 80% of the worst hardcore alcoholics, and 1 or 2 doses of psilocybin or LSD, and they were cured. They stopped completely.
The thing about drugs like that is all the stuff that you were burying in your mind comes out,
right?
And then you have to deal with it. Whether you might not actually be literally dealing with it, but you've dealt with it, the scenarios in your head. So they all come out, and you have to deal with them. In my late teenage years, early 20s, I did acid and mushrooms and stuff like that. And, to be able to survive a bad trip, you're like, what an accomplishment, right? Never doing that again, but until the next weekend. But I think there's growth in adversity. And like I said, it's friction. And if that creates friction in your brain...
Well, some of the research, what they say now is that one part of the brain is actually making neural connections to the other half of the brain. And so they say one side is talking to the other, and whatever it's doing, it's repairing whatever has been damaged there.
Like I said, I am game with any... Yeah. Like, I'm a firm believer in stem cells and all different types of treatment. If you've done everything possible that our medical societies here approve of, then, and you have nothing to lose, why not?
Well,
if you've been dealing with depression for 20 years and everything here hasn't worked, and you're talking, I believe you should be able to do anything to increase your quality of life.
Exactly.
Anything you want with your body. It's a choice and a decision, and you live with the consequences if it's good, bad, or otherwise.
Right.
But once you've tried everything, and I don't think you should be not allowed to do whatever you want with your body. And some people will say, well, the government's going to have to pay for your side effects of whatever goes wrong for the rest of your life. Well, you're doing it now anyway.
Well, yeah, that's right. Yeah,
You're paying for it now anyway. So.
So in your mental health work now, do you see anybody who's coming out who's been transformed? Anybody whose lives have been turned around?
A lot.
Oh yeah.
A lot, and that's what's really rewarding for me now. I'm so happy with what Canadian Mental Health Association is providing for services that I think there are big gaps in the provincial system and the federal systems that I think because we're over-policied. There's too many policies. There's more concern for liability than positive outcomes, I believe. And that's just my opinion. I think that's been a roadblock for a lot of people that are in need of those services. And I think that CMHA is really filling the gaps in service. And I'm super happy with the team that I'm with right now, and I'm super happy with the outcomes that we've been able to provide. We've only had the program since December, and just the amount of positive outcomes. I've been in the program since December that I've seen probably more in the last 4 months than I've probably seen in the last 10 years.
Oh, really?
So
yeah. So it's working.
It's working. So
good. And are there follow-ups?
Yeah.
As in they come back every year, every 2 years, the same
What I mean by positive outcomes is we have people that are healthier and happier. So there's follow-ups as much as the clients want.
Okay.
So if they need to come see me every week, then I'm good to see it. If that's what keeps people healthy and happy, whatever it takes to do that.
And so you just sit and you just chat?
Every client's individual, and that's the other thing that I think is a great part about what we provide. We don't put people in boxes. We treat people with common sense and courtesy and individually. So if you come in and say you're bipolar, you don't have a rundown card of this is how we treat bipolar people, or this is how we treat schizophrenic people, or this is how we treat depression people. We get to look at you individually and see what things will make you less depressed, what things will, and how we can help you apply those to your day-to-day living so that it's not just take a pill and things aren't going your way.
So what do you recommend? Probably exercise.
Exercise is the first thing that I recommend for everybody. Being outdoors a lot more, sunshine. And then it's just basically try to, through my experiences, which I've had a lot of in different, being and traveling the world, and I think I have the ability to pick up on body languages and seeing the non-verbalized gestures from people simply because a lot of the times when I had to try to figure things out, I couldn't speak the language. So, we just try to fill the gaps of what people are finding vacant in their lives. And one of the biggest things in our society today is loneliness. And that has a lot to do with technology. There is no physical interaction. People socializing on phones and computers all the time. But the humans need social interaction. They need touch. A simple gesture is hugging somebody has a holistic effect on the body, right? And that's something that today's generation is getting farther and farther away from. You talk to kids today, and they're in the room playing Xbox for 12 hours. so get out and play with your friends. And I said, I am playing with my friend.
Yeah.
He's next door.
Yeah. Exactly,
like six kids that live in houses beside each other, where like ourselves would be out building forts, or myself, I grew up in the water. I played in Stewart Cove the whole summer.
Yeah.
Rode from Charlotte to Stratford now, and I was saying, imagine today, my Child and Family Services would have been called every other hour.
Yeah.
I used to row a boat from Stewart Cove and Stratford over to the Charlottetown Wharf to jump off the wharf.
I lived on the water too.
Yeah, and then I rode from Stratford by the corner store there in Stogies all the way around to Governor's Island in Kepik one day. It took the whole day. But I did stuff like that.
Yeah, and you know what? We probably wouldn't let our kids do that. Like even me and my wife, like we talk about the things we were allowed to do, and we say, shit, we would never let our kid go. We wouldn't let our kids go up at 6 years old and walk up the road to the Petrocan station up here. That's not going to that would never happen. We would never let, and nobody around here would let their kids do that. But we were when we were kids, we were doing stuff like that.
I remember being like 10 years old and I had a dirt bike and driving my dirt bike from Stratford to Montague.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
And trying to find every gas station and running out of gas and
try to avoid the cops
to get a pop bottle and like stealing a bit of gas out of the gas station and a pop bottle to put in your dirt bike to get home and running from the cops and everything.
Oh, we had fun.
Yeah,
we had fun, man. Yeah,
and
we did.
you learn from all that stuff, and the little things didn't bother you as much back then. And we were. I don't know if we were fearless or clueless, but...
A bit of both.
Yeah, I remember building a raft out of... I don't know what year it was. I tell this story too. It's kind of... But the Coast Guard and Child and Family and the police and everybody would have been called at the time. The billboard law, I think it might have been the late 80s, where you weren't allowed to have billboards on Prince Edward Island anymore.
Okay.
And on the Trans-Canada Highway... on the Stratford, Pepsi had a whole bunch of signs that had to be taken down, and they put them behind the store, Ronnie Peters Esso, there in Stratford at the time. It was just a little garage, not the service center McDonald's that it is now today. And they were putting up new telephone poles right behind the Esso as well. So we rolled 3 telephone poles as kids, 9 years old or whatever we were, and rolled 3 telephone poles all the way across that back field into the harbor, and then took 3 4x8 Pepsi billboards that were there, and nailed them to the telephone poles with nails and that we'd stolen from some shed or construction site at the time. And then we drifted the raft underneath the Hillsborough Bridge.
Oh, no way.
And then jumped off down in Mount Stewart.
Yeah.
And then...
kids did. I didn't do anything quite like that. But I remember kids would do shit like that all the time back in Newfoundland. And nobody got hurt.
No.
When we grew up, I don't remember anybody even falling into the water.
Jumping ice cakes and drifting out. I drifted into the over in Charlottetown Harbor on an ice cake before.
Yeah.
And... yeah, I did all. And then I'm not saying these are things that should be done.
Exactly.
But
No,
I'm just,
do not do this at home.
Yeah, do not try this at home. But what I'm saying is, to be able to have the opportunity to go do that without being put in a bubble,
right?
I think made us more able to deal with adversity than happens today.
Exactly.
Both physically and mentally.
Yeah. So that would be your number one word of advice, probably to. New parents.
I don't have any advice for parents because I don't have a kid, and that's always the first thing they say to me is, well, you don't know, you don't have kids. So I'm not preaching to anybody. I'm just saying my observations from the people that I deal with and the way that I try to help them is try to get them outside the bubble a little more and be more open. People are so worried about failure, but failing at different aspects in your life is how you learn to get good at anything.
Exactly.
There's no way to grow, like I said, without a bit of friction and failure. And if you fail 3 times to be successful once, then it was worth it.
There you go. You've got somewhere to go?
I I do. I have to. Yeah.
It's probably more than an hour. It tends to go on.
Yeah, and I can talk forever. So.
Yeah, me too. But no, it's great having you. Thanks for coming. Maybe you come on again.
I would definitely come on.
Yeah,
again.
cool.
Absolutely.
And what's the latest thing? I think Red Rock, you said on
Red
April
Rock
12th?
on April 12th. And then I'm in New Breed Wrestling in Truro on April 13th. And then I think every weekend from now till July 15th, I think I'm somewhere.
Okay, good. So check them out. You said where they can find you?
So April 12th, Stratford Town Hall. You can get tickets for the event at the Factory and at Finley's Diner. You can get me at Kowboy MH on Twitter, Kowboy Mike Hughes on Facebook. Check out redrockwrestling.com, and you can check out Red Rock Facebook page as well.
Right on. Okay, take care. Thank you.
Thank you.